I love making quiche, I love eating quiche, I love it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. The most important thing about quiche is using a really good dough, and this is an all-purpose, all butter dough, and I'm going to show you some techniques so that your quiche comes out beautifully. One of the things you need is a quiche pan. I'm using this 12-inch tart pan. It has a removable bottom, so it's really easy. Once your quiche is made, you can pop it out and let it cool a little bit. Comes out easily, but then again, whatever kind of dish you have is fine. So first of all, we're going to roll the dough, and I'll show you a couple techniques. It's called blind baking, and what we're going to do is weight down the pie dough in the pan while it bakes. It has a first baking, and what this is going to do is create a nice smooth bottom. It's going to partially bake the crust, and you need that because you're going to be adding a custard into the dough. If you put it right in the raw dough, your crust will never bake. So let's start with rolling the dough. Lightly flour your surface and roll from the middle. And you want your dough at a really nice usable temperature. You don't want it too cold. If you try to roll dough that is too cold, it just doesn't work. So keep rotating and rolling. You can always reflour the surface or reflour your pan. Don't add too much flour though, it's just really a little light coat. And with a quiche, after we blind bake, what you really want to do is have a surface that is thin, but not too thin. You need a little bit of structure to hold up to the filling. So just about have it here. And I'll show you some tricks when you put the dough into the pan. So fold it in half, bring your pan up in front, put it halfway, flip it in, and what I do is take the dough and I push it down. Dough will shrink or slouch a little bit while it's baking, and this kind of self-corrects that problem. So push it right into those edges, and then once you've gone all the way around, I just simply do this and roll the rolling pin over, and there you go. You have a perfect shape. At this point, since you have pushed that dough down, you can bring it up just a little bit, just to the edge of the pan, and that way, if there is a little shrinkage, you still maintain an overall really nice look on your quiche. And if it's a little thick in spots, just take it off. So go around the entire rim of the pan and push it up a little bit. And you can see it's just perfect. So this is going to go into the freezer for about 30 minutes just to have it nice and cold, and then I'll show you how to blind bake. So we've just taken the tart shell out of the freezer and the dough is cold. So the technique we're going to use right now is called blind baking. Preheat your oven to 400. The tart, I've used a lipped pan with a piece of parchment underneath, because once I take the parchment and the rice off, I'm going to fill it with the custard, so it's all set for baking right here. So a piece of parchment, and fit it into the edges of the tart. And I'm going to fill with rice. You can use rice beans. They also do make pie weights, but you know what? Rice and beans, you can just reuse these over and over, and I think it's just pretty easy to use these. So fill your tart and leave enough on the side so that you can actually pick it up without having the rice fall into the dough once it's done. Otherwise you'll be picking little tiny pieces of rice out of your dough. So this is ready. We're going to put it into the oven for about 20 minutes. After 20 minutes in the oven, we're going to pull it out and take a look. And you can see that the edges have browned nicely. So a really nice technique is the paper is not hot. Take the paper, pull it together, and very gently pull it up. You don't want any little stray rice on your dough, or you don't want to rip the dough anywhere, especially when you're adding a custard, it'll spill all over. So the edges have stayed really nice, they haven't slouched, and the bottom's nice and flat. We're going to put it into the oven 5 more minutes just to get a little brown on the bottom. So during that last 5 minutes of the bake for the tart shell in the oven, we will prepare the custard. And the custard is 4 eggs and 2 cups of milk. It's basically a 2-to-1. 4 eggs is 8 ounces. And 2 cups of milk is 16 ounces. So crack your eggs into a bowl and use a whisk to break them up. And then we're going to add the milk. And this ratio gives your quiche a nice custard, but it's not too eggy. I like it, it's light and fresh. 2 cups of milk. And to this custard I will add 1 teaspoon of salt and a little fresh ground pepper. And then we can set this aside until we're ready to fill the shell. So after 5 minutes, we'll take a look and remove the tart shell from the oven. And 5 minutes is just about a good amount of time just to get a little bit of light golden brown on the bottom. And you can see the top has remained really nice, the structure's good. And we're gonna set that aside and let it cool for a few minutes while we prepare the spinach. So while the quiche shell is cooling, I've lowered the oven temperature to 350. And we're going to, in this quiche, we're going to fill it with sauteed spinach, little goat cheese, and fontina. So what we want to do is wilt the spinach, a little bit of oil into a pan, and let that come up. And once it's warm, we'll add the spinach, we'll toss, and then add to the shell. So the pan is warmed up. We're going to add the spinach, a little bit of salt, and let this cook down. And this is 6 ounces of baby spinach. A little bit of salt on top. And just turn over until it's ready. So we want to wilt the spinach, and you can see how 6 ounces goes down to just like a cup of cooked spinach. And I love the flavor of the baby spinach with goat cheese and fontina. It's great in the quiche. So a few more minutes and this should be ready. And we'll start preparing the quiche. So this is ready. Let's remove it from the stovetop and fill our quiche. So the spinach is ready and the tart shell is here. I just want to talk about a couple things before we do fill the tart shell. Check and just make sure you have no cracks in your dough. If you do, everything is going to run out the bottom. And if by chance you do have a crack, you can repair it with a little bit of uncooked dough. Put it on there, toss it in the oven for a few minutes, and that'll help. You can also brush the base with an egg wash, but we don't need to do that today. This looks just perfect. The sides have stayed up really nice. They haven't slouched, and the bottom is just lightly golden brown. So to start, I'm just going to put a little bit of cheese on the bottom. This is fontina, and I have 4 ounces of fontina. Kind of going to layer this. On top of that comes the spinach. And if your spinach is really wet, if you use frozen spinach, it's going to be really wet. This baby spinach is all right. And I'm going to scatter it over the cheese. And you'll want to scatter it evenly so every slice will have some spinach. So this was 6 ounces of spinach, and you can see how it's reduced just by wilting in the pan. On top of this, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of goat cheese. And then I'll put the remaining fontina on top. And everything has been seasoned, so there's no need to add any additional salt or pepper. There is a couple tricks of filling the quiche to the top with the custard mixture so you don't spill it as you're going over. If you spill over the side and it goes in between, you'll have the egg mark, the custard mark around your finished quiche, so you don't really want that. So this is the custard mixture, and I'm going to pour some on and let it settle a little bit, and you can watch it settle in, and you can distribute the cheese and vegetable. We'll put a little more, and anywhere that it's dipped down, you don't want to pour beyond that point. And it comes up and rises up anyways, but just for the initial bake, when it hits the oven, you want that custard to stop, to create a barrier and not overflow. So this is nice, and you can also put it into a small little pitcher, put your pan in the oven, and pour from there. And that'll give you a nice, beautiful overall finished product too. So you do want everything to look really beautiful. And I'm going to stop right there with my custard. So this will go into the oven, 350 degrees for 45 minutes. The tart shell has been carefully placed in the oven. I haven't spilled it all. And this is the remaining custard mix from the bowl. And you can pour a tiny bit on, and there's no spillage that way, and you can fill it to the top. So this carefully goes in and bakes for 45 minutes. So the quiche has been in the oven for 45 minutes at 350, and it looks beautiful. This is what you're looking for. Golden brown on top of the custard with the cheese, and the crust fully cooked. It looks gorgeous. We're gonna let it cool a few minutes before we can pop it out of that pan. Once it's cooled enough to touch, it's still a little bit warm. You can go around and push up on the bottom and just make sure that it's not stuck anywhere and comes out easily. And then at that point, I use a towel. It's a little bit warm still. You can take it out and set it onto once the pan has been removed, I just pick it up and I slide a knife between the quiche and the pan just to make sure if there's anything that is sticking, it can easily be removed. And then once you have it all smooth, slide it onto your serving dish. Hang on 1 second here. It's a little easier without the towel. And there you go. And then the quiche is ready, and it's beautiful. So quiche is so delicious. It's great for breakfast or a brunch, and it's also really nice with a small green salad, some fresh fruit. And let's take a look at this custard. Slides right out. It looks beautiful. And it's filled with the goat cheese, the melted fontina, the spinach. It's nice and golden brown on top. And it's beautiful.